Well, hey there team, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to Worth It Then, Worth It Now, an ongoing segment I do here on this channel where I look at games from yesteryear. Specifically, we're focusing in like 10 years plus at the moment, kind of compare and contrast to a decade remove of game development, but it's been a great little trip down memory lane and nostalgia for me, and I do line these up with a sale where possible. Today's no exception. Today's one of my favorite games of all time, which is Resident Evil, the original and the best. Well, I don't know about the original. You can still find versions of it. I believe GOG, Good Old Games, as part of their kind of game preservation thing that they're doing over there. They actually released 1 and 2, the originals, on their storefront probably a year or two ago, and I think I even looked at them, or at least 2, because 2 was definitely my favorite. The original Resident Evil 1 predates me a little bit. The original Resident Evil 2 was when I really got on the train. However, I have a very deep attachment to this, which is the HD Remaster, incredibly ahead of its time. The version on Steam says that it was 2015, so about 10 years ago. I actually played a lot of it when it was on the GameCube of all things. I went through a very brief stint. I'm not a huge Nintendo person, and I may have even bought the GameCube after the fact, you know, cheap console later. 2002, apparently. Maybe add a few years when I really got into it. Anyway, I have a history, and Resident Evil might be my favorite ongoing series. I think Code Veronica might be the best. I don't know if the world's ready for that conversation. So I'm incredibly biased when I say going back to it this morning was excellent, and it's so difficult to tear myself away. I just drop in for B-roll, start a new playthrough, but I'm already getting into it and memorizing which door in the back of my mind unlocks what key, and oh my god, it is such a perfect game. But yeah, this was the HD remaster version, basically 10 years plus before what we're seeing now, which is Capcom doing the same thing, but everything onwards, right? 2, 3, and 4 actually, more recently, which also goes hand in hand with a kind of resurrection and new wave of the series on the back of 6's poor reception, you know, 7, 8, and I guess we've got Requiem coming up now. So it's a very good time to be a Resident Evil fan, but this is where it all started, and this is where Capcom really tested that blueprint, that remake kind of thing, not just remasters, not Last of Us 27th release with better eyelashes or any of that crap. Like, this is still the spirit and framework of the original game, but ground up, remade, and definitely more palatable. I think most people who weren't on board for the original Resident Evil 1 from way back in the 90s would have a very difficult time going back and playing it fresh with no nostalgia. This is much more palatable. And uniquely, the whole catalog's not on sale at the moment. It's just this and 0. And the Resident Evil 0 Steam release didn't actually come to years later, so it's a little bit beyond my scope at the moment. But it is interesting. They're part of like an Origins bundle, and next month we've got Resident Evil Requiem coming out, so as best as I can tell, this is an attempt to get people interested and hyped, and you should be. Requiem's looking to be excellent. I'm very excited for it, and if you've missed any of the Resident Evils, picking this up right now, potentially with 0 as well, I suppose, bundled together on the cheap, you can't really go wrong. Anyway, I'm gushing. I recognize that. Allow a man to have a favorite game, or a game series at least. If you don't know anything about Resident Evil, it's one of the grandfather games of survival horror. Probably the second one out of the gate after the original Alone in the Dark, which never really hit huge mainstream success. I think Resident Evil's the one that really made its mark in this genre. And while it is survival horror, I will forever die on this hill that it's not really scary. There are horror elements, but it's much more like a Metroidvania-esque game, which is to say you have a play space with backtracking built into the gameplay design, right? As an example of something like Halo, that is in one way a very long corridor, right? You start at chapter 1 and you go through to the end. I'm not trying to poo-poo Halo, but I'm just giving you an idea of how the different design philosophies work. While there is a little bit of backtracking in Halo, it's minimal, right? And it's trying to make the most out of the environment. Ultimately, it's about linear pacing, moving from point A to point B, and, you know, scripted kind of events along the way. This is what a lot of mainstream gaming is, at least, you know, from a shooter perspective, from a narrative narrative perspective. What a Metroidvania, generally speaking, is a more compacted but detailed area with lots of little areas within the areas that are locked off, usually by abilities. In the case of Metroid and Castlevania, double jumps and things like that. In the case of a Resident Evil, it's more like keys from a set, hearts, diamonds, that sort of thing, that will unlock certain doors and open up new avenues. And then when you compare it to other things like Silent Hill, which never really took me, because Silent Hill, well, thematically for starters, is a lot less grounded. Resident Evil kind of tries to explain itself in Hollywood science fashion, right? There's a virus at the core of it. Everyone's experimenting on it. In the modern games, it has sort of outbroke from the original Patient Zero, Ground Zero, Raccoon City mansions, that sort of stuff, and it's gone international essentially, and from that you have all these corporations springing up, and the lore has gone to a much bigger, grander scale, but at the core of it, the idea is it's about engineering viruses into bioorganic weapons, and it all starts with essentially a zombie outbreak in Resident Evil 1, but then you compare that to something like a Silent Hill, and while it's not a pissing match, that generally deals with, trauma and grief, and it's much more abstract, and I think it's strong for what it does, and then you mix that in with a healthy sense of trying to actually scare the shit out of you. They're sort of how I compare and contrast the two games and how they stand separately as a series. So Resident Evil got its claws in me for being a Metroidvania that just so happens to be set in this universe where we're combating viruses that turn people into zombies, and people mutate it further and further, and the cast of characters grow. There's a lot of main character staples. In this first one, you've got Chris and Jill at their beginnings. 2 goes into Leon and Claire, and they're sort of your core 4 characters. Don't get me wrong, there's plenty of others that get expanded upon, and some get fridged a little bit along the way. I mean, even Barry gets his show in Revelations 2, which I need to go back to that as well. That was so good. But that should give you an idea broadly of what Resident Evil is. It's a more compacted play space, but very detailed, a lot of back and forth, solving pretty entry-level puzzles. They're more interested in giving you the warm and fuzzies than stumping you and making you feel like an idiot. Again, very consumable, very mainstream, and I've got no problem with that at all. I enjoy a good puzzle game as much as the next dude, but these puzzles are more complementary as opposed to being an IQ skill check. Mix that in with trying to inventory manage your ammunition, like even just playing this through on the normal difficulty. Don't even get me started on the difficult selector. It's just a weird Japanese thing with the way they do menus. Even today, Capcom, you go into their game engine graphics settings and you can't just put it on Ultra or something like that. It'll be all these... Anyway, look, I'm getting sidetracked. Capcom and their bloody menu options are terrible. The difficulty is so confusing. Just pick the first one, the top one, hiking or whatever it is. But I found myself out of ammo and probing all the different avenues. Okay, if I go up here, there's 2 doors I want to try with this key, but there's 2 zombies in the way. I'm out of ammo, I'm down to knife. I have 1 or 2 defensive items, which was something that was introduced in this remake. Basically, if a zombie grabs you, you get a get out of jail free consumable, like stab him in the head with a dagger or zap him with a stun battery. But, they're very rare and one use only. So, you're starting to peel the level to pieces. Oh, maybe I'll go and try over this avenue, and I don't know if this door's locked or whatever. All of this, again, I use the word comfortable because there is something about it. While there is a challenge, you can't just go guns blazing, wasting ammo. You have to think about it. Dare I say, navigating the zombies themselves is kind of a puzzle. But you also have like a map overlay that's simply color-coded as red means this room still has items hidden in here somewhere, whether it's through a puzzle or maybe there's an ammo box in the corner that you missed, and green means you're all good, you're done with this room. Like, there is something about it. I'm not a hardcore completionist. I've had my achievement chasing days when I was younger, and while I'm not particularly interested in spending 100 hours to get that 1% achievement for gamer points, there is something to be said about an interface with a map like that where resources consumable are actually quite at a premium and important, and it is important to be thorough. This game both encourages and rewards being thorough with like I said, readable tools like a map that will give you green light basically when you've scrubbed the room. And then, like I said, when you put that all together with the puzzles and the meta puzzle, which is solving the room and finding the right door, like the eureka of finding a door and putting the right key in. I don't know any of them off by heart, even though I've played this game like 10 times. But that moment when you turn the key and it says, oh, you're done with this key, discard it. You know, there's kind of something really satisfying about just the puzzles within puzzles within puzzles. Like, dare I say, I think Resident Evil as a series, for the most part, shines when it is kind of a puzzle game at multiple layers. Anyway, look, I realize that this is me kind of waxing romantic about one of my favorite series. It kind of starts here, at least in modernity. Like, the originals are interesting to go back to, but even as a stalwart fan, I wouldn't necessarily recommend them. I'd say you start here if you're fair weather or what have you, or you're interested in getting in. This is the ground floor. Zero, you should probably play chronologically, like, you know, get through 2, 3. I can't remember when Zero released originally. It is actually a really good companion to 1. Even though I've barely gone into any of the stories, where 2 and 3, in a way, are companions to one another because they run as a 2 and a 2.5 in Raccoon City across a different timeline. In many ways, 1 and 0 do the same thing with Alpha and Bravo team, and you play Rebecca and 0, and, you know, so there's a whole bunch of stuff there that I haven't really gone into. But I suppose the important takeaway is this. It's a very satisfying game when you get into the rhythm. I feel it's more puzzler than abject horror. There's a lot of investment for potential fans, what with the cast of characters that keep coming back, recurring and all that. Like, it's managed to straight face land a series where, you know, Leon's coming back in Requiem and everyone's very excited about that because everyone likes Leon. Like, no one doesn't like any of the characters from Resident Evil. There's a lot of reasons to get into it, and taken as a whole, honestly, the stumbles are way less than the successes. For the most part, 90% of all of the Resident Evil stuff, at least the mainline stuff, is excellent. At a certain point, I'm just going to keep waffling. Resident Evil is great. It was awesome to come back to it and boot it up this morning. I'm probably going to keep playing through it anyway because I'm an idiot. There's a million things I should be playing, but this is my junk food. Pick it up on the cheap. You will not regret it. Tim, might just leave it there for the time being, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.